Hi there, I'm Jimmy Dodd, and I'm going to tell you the story of Bambi the deer. It all began on a beautiful spring morning deep in the deepest forest, and old Mr. Owl, who was just trying to get to sleep for the day, was one of the first to hear the commotion. Everybody in the forest was talking about it before long. The squirrels and chipmunks, the possums and the rabbits, and even the moles. Old Owl finally had to ask Mrs. Quail what it was all about. Why, she said, haven't you heard? It's happened at last. The young prince is born. And she went running on without another word. So Mr. Owl followed along too. And when he got to a little thicket hidden away in the darkest part of the forest, sure enough, there the young prince was, a tiny, spotted baby deer, lying asleep by his mother's side. And just above them, on a big rock, stood his father, the great king of the forest, looking as proud as could be of his new son. All the animals gathered around to congratulate the mother deer, and she woke up the little fawn so he could say hello to everyone. "What you gonna name him?" said Thumper, the little rabbit. "Well," said Mother Deer, "I think I'll call him Bambi." A baby deer has a lot to learn and not much time to learn it in. And so it wasn't long before Prince Bambi was out for his first walk through the forest, even though he couldn't walk very well yet. His mother led the way, and they met many of their friends. "Good morning, young prince," said the quail family as they ran by. "Good morning, young prince," said the raccoons, who were washing their hands in the stream. "Good morning, young prince," said Mother Possum and her babies, who were all hanging by their tails from a tree branch. They were upside down, and Bambi had to turn his head upside down, too, so he could see them right. He was looking so hard at the possums that he forgot all about his legs, and the first thing he knew, he'd gotten them all mixed up and fallen right in front of the rabbit family. But he wasn't hurt, and to prove it, he got right up again and went out walking with the baby rabbits. Thumper, who was a terrible show-off, raced ahead and pounded his hind foot on a big hollow log. "I'm thumpin'," he said. "That's why they call me Thumper." And he ran ahead again. Bambi stopped to look at some birds who were singing and eating berries in a bush beside him. Thumper hurried back. "Those are birds," he told Bambi. "Bird," said Bambi very solemnly. The rabbits hopped up and down around him. "He's learning to talk," they shouted. "The young prince is learning to talk." Well, Bambi was pretty proud of himself, and he sniffed at a patch of flowers. "Bird," he said, thinking everything was a bird. The rabbits had to correct him. No, they said. "Those are flowers." Bambi sniffed some more. "Flower," he said. "Pretty flower." And just then he found himself nose to nose with a little black and white baby skunk. "Flower," said Bambi, and the little rabbits burst out laughing, but the skunk stopped them. "That's all right," he said. "He can call me a flower if he wants to." And that was how Flower got his name, even though he didn't really smell anything like a flower at all. But they were interrupted by the first raindrops of an April shower. Bambi and his mother hurried back to the warm, dry thicket to wait until the clouds had passed. Well, the little rainstorm passed quickly, and so did the summer days for Bambi. Almost before he knew it, his mother decided he was old enough to go out on the meadow for the first time. It was a beautiful place, where the grass was green and tender. But when Bambi tried to run out onto it, his mother stopped him. "You must never rush into the meadow," she said. "Out there it is wide and open, and there are no trees or bushes to hide us, and so we must be very careful." And she walked ahead to see if it was safe. After a minute, she called him out, though, and they had a wonderful game of hide-and-seek in the tall grass. It was on the meadow that day that Bambi first learned there were other deer in the forest, when he met Feline and her mother. Feline was a little girl fawn, just Bambi's age. They liked each other right away and ran off across the grass, through a little pond, and up on top of a big rock where they could see the whole meadow. Then a herd of stags burst out onto the meadow. They had come to exercise and practice their fighting tactics. Feline ran back to her mother, but Bambi stayed on the rock and watched as the great stags ran round and round below him, butting each other with their great forked antlers. Suddenly another stag, bigger and older than all the others, dashed up and reared in front of the herd. It was the warning, Man was in the forest. Everyone ran madly for the trees where they could hide, and the meadow was empty in an instant. Bambi was still standing on the big rock, and he didn't know where to go until the great stag returned and called to him to follow. They barely made it into the trees in time. The stag led Bambi back to the thicket and then disappeared without a word. Bambi ran in and nestled up against his mother, and they stayed very still until the danger was completely past. It doesn't take long for winter to come in the forest once it makes up its mind, and so one morning Bambi woke up to find the ground covered with white. At first, he and Thumper had a wonderful time making footprints in the snow and sliding across the icy pond. But later he found that winter was no fun at all, really. Food was scarce, and he was always hungry. Sometimes it seemed that spring would never come. Then one day his mother found a little patch of new grass growing up from under the snow. It was a certain sign of spring, but just as they started to eat, the warning came. Man was in the forest again. "Run, Bambi! Run for the thicket! Don't look back!" his mother called. "I'll be right behind you! Run!" Bambi ran into the thicket and turned around. "We made it, Mother," he said happily. "We made it!" But his mother wasn't behind him. Well, she'd be along any minute now. "Mother," he called. "Mother!" He ran back out of the thicket to look for her. Then the great stag, his father, appeared almost as if from nowhere. "Your mother can't be with you anymore. Ever," he said. "Man has taken her away. Come with me, my son, for now you must be brave and learn to walk alone." Every spring, old Mr. Owl had the same trouble. Everybody in the forest was singing and carrying on so loudly that he couldn't get a wink of sleep. "Love's sweet song," he muttered. "Bah! Pain in the pin feathers, I'd call it." And he flapped away to another tree where it was quieter. But he'd no sooner settled down there than he heard a familiar voice say, "Hello, friend Owl, remember me?" The owl could hardly believe his eyes, for there stood Bambi, and he was almost a full-grown stag. He'd even sprouted a pair of forked antlers. Just then a flock of birds flew by, twittering and singing at the tops of their voices. "What's the matter with them?" Bambi asked. "What makes them act that way?" Mr. Owl explained it all to him. "They're in love, twitter-pated. Nearly everyone gets twitter-pated in the spring. It happens like this." And he demonstrated as he talked. You're walking along, minding your own business, looking neither to the right nor to the left, when all of a sudden you run right into a pretty face. First thing you know, you're weak in the knees, your head's in a whirl, and you feel light as a feather. That's being twitter-pated. But that isn't all. It can happen to anybody. It could even happen to you. And he pointed at Bambi. Bambi laughed and walked on, minding his own business, looking neither to the right nor to the left, when all of a sudden he ran right into Feline. She too had grown up during the winter, and she was beautiful. She said hello and blinked her eyes. Bambi was scared, and he backed away from her as fast as he could, but his antlers got tangled in a tree branch, and he couldn't get away no matter how he struggled. Feline giggled because he did look pretty silly caught in the tree like that. Then she kissed him on the cheek, and that did it. He was twitter-pated. His head was spinning, and he felt light as a feather. Together, he and Feline walked off across the meadow, and the wind sang a love song in the trees. Then, early one morning, Bambi awoke suddenly, sensing that something was wrong. There was a strange new odor in the air. He ran to his favorite lookout point, where he could see the valley below. His father, the great stag, was already there, and together they watched a thin column of smoke rising from the trees in the distance. Man had come again. "There are many this time," his father said. "We must go deep into the forest. Follow me." And he dashed away. Bambi started after him, but then, remembering Feline, he turned and ran back to the thicket. She was gone, and for a moment he waited, calling, "Feline! Feline!" But there was no answer. Suddenly he realized that the smell of smoke had grown much stronger. It was a forest fire. He ran for his life, but no matter where he went, The fire raged ahead of him. He could hardly see through the smoke. Burning branches crashed down from the treetops on all sides. Then his father appeared. "This way, Bambi. Head for the lake," he called, and they ran off together, following a little stream. Burning trees crashed into the water behind them, and just ahead there was a steep cliff and a waterfall. They stopped at the edge and started to turn back, but another tree was falling right at them. There was a deep pool below. No time to lose. They jumped for it. Just as the tree fell where they'd been standing. It was a tough swim from the waterfall on down to the beaver pond, but Bambi and his father finally made it. There was an island in the pond, and the animals had gathered there to wait until the fire burned out. Many deer had found their way there, but Feline was not among them. Then, as the last of the fire died out on a hilltop in the distance, a lone deer swam out to the island and joined Bambi and his father. It was Feline, safe at last. Well, it wasn't long after that there was another great commotion in the forest, but this time everyone was happy, for a fawn had just been born to Bambi and Feline. Again, all the animals gathered at the little thicket hidden away deep in the darkest part of the forest to see the new baby and congratulate Feline. And sure enough, curled up beside her, just as Bambi himself had been not so long ago, was a fawn. No, there was another little head, twins. And as for Bambi, well, he was standing on a big rock just above the thicket, proud and happy. For at last the time had come when he could take his place among the great stags of the forest.